Each of the manifold horrors of the galaxy is enough to drive a human insane. Xenos monstrosities, otherworldly sorcerers, and unholy aberrations from darkest nightmare plague mankind. Against everything that threatens humanity's survival stand the Astra Militarum. In a galaxy sometimes without light, and often without hope, they fight and die that others shall not. From the million worlds of the Imperium, their immense armies march endlessly to war. Countless soldiers, heavy battle tanks, thunderous artillery, and sky-darkening flights of gunships are commanded by iron-willed officers whose chain of command is ruthlessly enforced. Not for naught is the Astra Militarum known as the Hammer of the Emperor. Occasionally unwieldy, often indiscriminate, it is the Imperium's weapon of total and unrelenting force. To be a soldier in one of the Astra Militarum's unnumbered armies is to be one amongst hundreds of thousands of all too mortal warriors. Yet, it is also to be a part of humanity's greatest ever war machine and to lend one's faith, strength, and hate to that engine of devastation as it crushes all before it through sheer brute force. For in the galaxy of the 41st millennium, there is only war. Inquisition file, reference 101003/A/AM. Ordo, Militum. File accept Xload, classified. Inquisitor ID, error. From the word of the Holy Inquisition, the Astra Militarum is the largest coherent force of armed warriors within the known galaxy. Incalculable masses of mortal men and women, bolstered by line after line of heavy support tanks, walkers and artillery pieces, including air support from Valkyries and other gunships, are fed into battlefields on world after world every day. Flesh and blood, human warriors fight wars of devastation, guerrilla warfare, and hellish zones of attrition in the Emperor's name across the worlds of the Imperium and beyond. These may be decade-long sieges, tactical invasions with strike missions, or any other type of warfare seen to be of import to the goals of the Imperium. Nonetheless, the Imperial Guard fight an eternal battle for the subsistence and perhaps prosperity of mankind. The Imperium of mankind is orders of magnitude beyond what any normal citizen of said empire can comprehend. The scale is so vast that even simple means of communication and travel between may take untold years. Between the beacons of humanity that light the galaxy, and between worlds, both aspects may involve myriad risk. The only means of both is through the inimical realm of the warp. Also known as the immaterium, this realm not beholden to the laws of physics of real space, is the only means for interstellar passage or memoranda. However, the warp does not suffer either to pass and without adequate protection or safeguard, and will taint, displace, or confound all that attempts to move through its territory. Thus, any mechanism, manner, or strategy that relies on either is continually at risk, and where this is the case, the stalwart defenders of humanity lie beleaguered, not merely due to the untold horrors of the galaxy, but also its vice grip preventing any cognizant organization that humanity hopes to achieve. On countless worlds, chaos horrors, Xenos threats, heretical cults, or even disparate human worlds or rival members of the Imperium itself clash. These threats are pushed back only by the iron will and indomitable resolve of countless human soldiers who fight and die in the Emperor's name. While none will know their sacrifice, as each is merely a plot in warfare on a galactic scale, soulless grinding logistics is the only manner in which the Imperium continues to survive, and only the Astra Militarum can hope to fight the skirmishes, battles, and wars essential to this plight. The Militarum's primary method of war is that of the formation. Deployments of the Guard to any given war zone may range from companies of some hundreds of troops all the way to entire army groups, which may include countless companies, armoured vehicles, as well as auxiliary and support battalions. While some battles are fought alongside more elite soldiery, most are fought by the grit and determination of the Guard alone. These mortal men and women will fight and die in unrelenting battles of pure attrition, where incalculable lives are lost every minute, hour, and day for every minor or major objective set. The Guard relies on the twin foci of its immense numbers and devastating firepower to devastate the enemies of mankind. Where the Xenos may rely on technological marvels, incomprehensible machinery, or psychic prowess, the Guard will blot out the sky with a cavalcade of ordnance that no foe can withstand. Where chaotic forces or heretical cults call to war, the Guard answers with lass fire, artillery shell, and high explosive. All foes are eventually overcome with pure, unrelenting strength of arms, armor, and warrior. Countless heavy weapons fire, Imperial tank formation, volleys of rifle fire, as well as the tried and tested bayonet find their mark upon the foes of the Emperor's light. Because whilst the enemies of mankind may employ dark sciences, supernatural powers, or weapons beyond humanity's ken, such defiance comes to naught in the face of human intolerance, fed by the wellspring of faith in the God Emperor and backed by ample firepower. For all the might of its armoured lines of walkers, tanks, or aircraft, the true strength of the Astra Militarum is the countless waves of infantry who lay down their lives fighting for a cause that will never know their sacrifice. The scale of warfare throughout the Imperium is so vast that in its complexity, it dehumanizes all that take part. Companies, battalions, and even worlds become mere statistics to the bureaucrats within the Departamento Munitorum. Yet without their sacrifice, the doom of humanity would all but be assured. Inquisitor's Log. Designation: Ordo Militum. Subject: the Guard. While some of my order delight in their grandstanding on the more alluring ordos, such as those of the Malleus or Xenos, those more enlightened know that the true doom of the Imperium lies in the corruption, decline, and destruction of the Astra Militarum. The failure of the Guard and its mortal warriors is the most sure and portent doom that the Imperium may face. To be among the Guard is to be one amongst countless others, to only know that you will die and none will remember your name. But it is the duty of those amongst my ordo to remember, perhaps not their names, but their deeds, those who hold the monsters at bay, to stare into the eclipse of destiny, death and devastation without blinking. We will ensure the strength, purity, and zeal of the Guard, for it is the hammer of the Emperor that is not just his weapon of war, but its foundation, and whilst it stands, the Imperium endures. Warmaster Demetrius looked to the commissars. I have at my command an entire battle group of the Imperial Guard, 50 regiments, including specialized drop troops, stealthers, mechanized formations, armored companies, combat engineers, and mobile artillery. Over 500,000 fighting men and 30,000 tanks and artillery pieces are mine to command. Emperor, show mercy to the fool that stands against me, for I shall not. Whilst the Imperium is governed by the beleaguered behemoth that is the Adeptus Administratum, the Astra Militarum is overseen by a subsect known as the Departamento Munitorum. It is the principal function of the Munitorum to ensure that the endless requirements for fresh soldiery are replenished via tithe of imperial worlds. Within the Departamento are the general staff of the Guard. It will monitor tithe, holding planetary governors and their worlds to account. Fresh soldiers are oft children conscripted, raised as native regiments and deployed to show the merits of this labor on any number of imperial war zones across the known galaxy. Worlds not rich in martial conscripts may pay tithe in arms, armor, rations, or anything else the Guard requires. The Departamento will administrate the Militarum's countless campaigns whilst gathering soldiers, arms and armor for each and every skirmish, battle, and ongoing war zone. Its members will liaise with the Navis Imperialis in order to logisticate transportation. Commissars oversee the loyalty of the men and are rightly feared as they are uncompromising in this duty. They additionally fall back to marshalling and, when necessary, execute members of their own company if required to ensure their dedication to their duty and prevent desertion. Whilst to some this may be seen as cruel or tyrannical, when faced with the countless horrors of the galaxy, only such a stance could achieve total victory. Each and every battle or war zone must be weighed against the wider goals of the Imperium at large. Logistics, including nearby worlds, available tithe, the ever-present threat of the warp, all must be weighed against the importance of the war zone or planet itself. Given that an Imperial response may take months, years, or even decades to arrive, it is often the case that previously dissimilar regiments may be forced to act together, or the objectives previously stated on communique may have long passed when reinforcements or supplies arrive. Companies, battalions, and other reinforcements may find a previously dense garden world devoid of life, its defenders long dead, overrun by Xenos or Chaos forces, or even reinforced and saved by other Imperial forces. The fact that the forces of the Astra Militarum battle, reinforce and bolster these war zones at all, is testament to the scope of the Imperium at large, and the size of the Guard as a whole. Soldiers of the Emperor, we stand on the brink of a mighty war. Soon you will face the first battle of many against those who would defy the Emperor's will, and keep these human worlds buried in the fetid darkness of heresy and unbelief for their own selfish reasons. They seek to withhold from their fellow man the blessings of the Emperor's word and the goodness of his holy rule. We are here to save our fellows from this wickedness and restore order and light to these long abandoned worlds. Today, we take the first step towards our greater goal. It is an important step. If we falter here, we will fail. If we do not harden our resolve and forswear false mercy and carry ourselves with the firmness of purpose this great task deserves, we will condemn billions of our fellow humans to lives of squalid darkness and eternities of torment in the toils of the demons who feast on the souls of the damned. Do not let your finger rest on the trigger of your weapon. Sparing our enemies merely extends their lives for a pitiful blink in the Emperor's sight and condemns their souls for all eternity. To show mercy to the heretic is to do the work of demons yourself. The way forward is harsh. It carries us through lava seas and across great chasms where the jaws of the earth could swallow a Titan whole. It passes through sandstorms so powerful they can strip a man to the bloody bone in seconds. It takes us through clouds of poison so deadly that one breath is fatal. This is all for the good of the God Emperor. They expect us to come, but they will not expect a massive armoured assault from the northwest. We shall hit them where we know the defences are weak. We will have the pyrite refineries and the weapon factorums, and it shall be men that we bring millions of lost souls into the Emperor's light. For the Imperium, for the Emperor. Lord Commander Solar Macarius, 356 to 400 M41. The glorious tapestry of memory glorifies the noble deeds of its warriors, individual regiments, and their worlds of origin. Histories and tale of legendary victories are oft used as ideals for mortal men to aspire to recount and relieve history so that it may repeat itself and keep the vain hope of victory alive. Tapestries as old of the Imperium hint at the founding of the Astra Militarum. It was following the heretical actions of the traitor Horus Lupercal and the Horus heresy that the former Imperial army has outlived its purpose and could not be relied upon. The Tactica Imperium thus detailed the severing of the interlaced hierarchy between the Imperial fleets and armies. The power of the Astartes over the mortal militaries had been too profound. It was hoped that with this separation that the power of individuals to command vast swathes of Imperial forces would be extinguished, thus requiring communication with Terran authority and reducing the risk of heresy, betrayal, and coup. Whilst the heresy claimed much of the Imperial army, equal parts remained loyal. Faded frescoes celebrate the deeds of these regiments, and many in the current era find homage or lineage to these former heroes. Many of the Guard in the era Indomitus find pride in the forebearers of ages past. Legends and echoes of these deeds including those of Alanius Pius or the final sally forth of Darrow Alpha Brigade, find these tales repeated amongst countless worlds. In the centuries following the heresy, a combination of the zealous spread of the imperial creed by the Adeptus Ministorum alongside the adepts of the machine god, their arms, armor, and engine seer agents facilitated the reformation of the imperial army into the Astra Militarum. The Guard would thus be renewed. Its soldiers, weapons of war, and steadfast zeal would be required to crush heretic, Xeno, and traitor alike. The crusades, conquests, scouring and war zones of the Astra Militarum have long been chronicled by the scribes of the Administratum, and its some spend their entire lives scouring and recounting the past deeds of the Guard. Hundreds of lifetimes could be spent in the attempt to present a coherent history of the Astra Militarum. What is clear to the most proficient scribes is this. During the scouring, the forces of the newly minted Astra Militarum waged a war of retribution against the cowardly heretic forces fleeing to the Eye of Terror. It would be then that the fortress world of Cadia and the system as a whole would become a bastion against the Terror. It would hold against warp invasion and crusade. It would appear impenetrable. At the turning of the 41st millennium, Lord Solar Macarius commanded a legendary campaign into the Segmentum Pacificus, conquering no less than 1,000 worlds. These war zones and campaigns necessitated larger and larger tithes of soldiers, arms and armor. It would be upon his death that these gains would reverse, liberated worlds consumed by ideas heretical and designs of civil war. These losses stress the mortality of those who serve in humanity's hammer, its defense against the darkness, consumed all too easily with the passing of its greatest minds. Xenos invasions, the First Tyrannic War, the Damocles Crusade, all while the forces of chaos multiply. It was with the fortress world of Cadia that a key moment of imperial history would be decided. The world, a fulcrum in the defense against chaos forces, sallying forth from the Eye of Terror for close to 10,000 years. The planet proper of Cadia would stand guard over the Cadian Gate region, its ever-stalwart soldiers showing stoic duty against horrific odds against chaos forces, their inviolability apparent to the Imperium proper. But it would be with the increasingly ambitious and devastating Black Crusades of Abaddon the Despoiler at the end of the 13th that Cadia would find its end, but this would not be without a fight. Cadia had provided the Imperium with a fortress world from which Imperial Guard campaigns had originated, taking the fight to heretic fleets, cult uprisings, and demonic incursions for millennia. The world had long stood fast against endless invasions of cultists, mutants, and the horrific chaos, Space Marine legions. Every time, Cadia stood firm. The Guard and the Cadians, whilst oft taking heavy losses, would defend every bastion, starfort, trench, and bunker. Cadians would make the foes of mankind pay for every inch of territory beyond the Eye. The 13th would be different, the numbers of such foes reaching records not seen since the heresy itself. The Cadians and the Guard would fight with valor under continual assault. They would endure under the threat of countless chaos forces poured into and against the world which would defy him. Lines of mechanized walkers, Lehman Russ tanks and artillery bombardments would devastate waves of invading forces. The Cadian tank divisions and Cadian shock troops would grimly hold defensive positions. The Khazarkin would launch precision strikes against heretic forces, whilst other Guard formations would reply other advances. It would be the rallying cry of Cadia stands that would be echoed across Guard companies and amongst the fortified casas within Cadia and other war zones. It was the Lord Castellan of Cadia Ursarkar E. Creed that would be critical in its defence. Formerly a colonel of the Cadian 8th, Creed found command amongst a dark plot, betrayal and assassination of Cadian High Command. Promoted to Lord Castellan, Creed would be instrumental in leading the defenders and their last stand from the fortress of Casa Kraf. He would reinforce the defences and send for aid, both of which were critical in its defence. This would see legions of Imperial Guardsmen alongside the mighty Adeptus Astartes and Adeptus Sororitas rally in the Cadian defense. The defenders would fight valiantly, slaying heretic, cultist, and traitor Astartes alike, but it would sadly be insufficient. For it was at the zenith of the bloodshed that Abaddon the Despoiler would send a sabotage Blackstone fortress, an ancient void station of eons past, directly into the surface of the planet. This would be the coup de grace for the world, as its inexorable approach would crack through the atmosphere akin to a shooting celestial body. Creed would order the evacuation and stand steady in its defense, rallying as many as possible to escape the doomed world. At the crescendo of its impact, the Void Fortress would split continent, create tsunami, hurricane, and begin the death knell of the planet proper. Within its final breath, the warp would envelop the planet, feasting greedily on the carcass. It would be only 3 million of a billion souls that would survive. But Creed and the Eighth stood to the final moment, making safe the evacuees, for the planet broke before the Guard did. Thus, in the modern Imperium, the remnants of the Cadia forces live on, veteran survivors, regiments and battalions to fight evermore in the Emperor's name. For where even a single Cadian stands and fights, Cadia stands. Inquisitor's Log, Designation, Ordo Militum, Subject, the Cadians, Cadia stands. A seemingly mundane phrase, but one that will echo throughout eternity. If there is the exemplar of the Astra Militarum, the Guard, it is the Cadians. They show what it is to be human, to stand down the horror, your own mortality, the doom of a world, and to know that the enemy were left wanting. Those within the Ordo know that the Cadians are a beacon to the Imperium at large, a show of what even in the darkness of the 41st millennium humanity may achieve. We continue to hunt for avenue to explore the ruins, to recover triumph, treasure, and artifact, and to give those remaining some semblance of rest. Whilst my missions take me to countless worlds among the stars, it will always be my time with the Cadian Eighth that I remember as a show of his light gleaming in mere Guardsmen. The flames of hatred rage across the galaxy. Like a forest, humanity stands before it all but ready to be consumed. Despite the darkness that has cut our galaxy in twain, we must find unity in faith and stand against those that would destroy us, our weapons roaring our defiance. We will cross the scar of chaos and reunite humanity step by bloody step. As Cadia was consumed, millions of Guardsmen swallowed by the warp, the tearing open of the Great Rift would begin. Eruptions of warp storms old and new would come about, and the fate of half of the galaxy, the Imperium Nihilus, would remain unknown beyond the Great Rift. The Astra Militarum would be stretched to infinitesimal capacity, as each Militarum Regimentum, the totality of the forces of a given world, could not sustain the constant conflict. It would be with the arrival of Reboot Guilliman and the launch of the Indomitus Crusade, under his purvey as Lord Commander of the Imperium, that the mustering of the Imperium would take place. The Crusade would seek to bring back the light of the Emperor to the wider galaxy, and the Nihilus and the demands of this crusade that would be placed upon the Astra Militarum would be without equal. Battle groups would move from system to system, subsuming tithe to sustain the gargantuan effort, as regiments would also be deployed to the Offico Logisticarum and the formation of hub fortresses in the path of the crusade. This crusade would be vital for the future of the Imperium, to push back the corrupting forces of chaos and Xenos designs. Astra Militarum forces would be requisitioned to new war zones daily, coordinated by localized officos of the Departamento Munitorum. This would include infantry regiments, armored battalions, artillery divisions, and super-heavy tank companies. Grinding logistics, storm-tossed warp channels, Xenos dangers, and chaos invasions would all peril the crusade. Thus, it would be that the Segmentum Solar, home to Terra itself, would be embattled. The Lord of the Segmentum Solar, Lord Solar Arcadian Leontus, would repudiate the coming threats of heretic fleets and innumerable Xenos. Lord Solar Arcadian Leontus, whose long procession of titles, privileges and ceremonial honors places him among the highest authorities of the Imperium, bears responsibility for all Astra Militarum forces within the Segmentum Solar. He is the son of Terra's most ancient nobility, heir to a lineage of unbroken service that stretches back through uncounted generations. Raised amid the gilded spires of the throne world and educated within its most exalted military academies, Leontus was shaped as much by politics as by war. In him, diplomacy and discipline are inseparable. Survival in the Imperium demands mastery of both. The losses under his stewardship have been staggering. Warp storms have swallowed entire armies. Campaigns of attrition have ground regiments into dust. Calamities without name or explanation have erased soldiers by the billion. What remained was further drawn away to feed the fires of the Indomitus Crusade. Leontus would never question a Primarch's decree. Such defiance is unthinkable. Yet within the strict confines of obedience, he has fought wars of another kind. Planetary lords, Navis Imperialis admirals, and the austere adepts of the Officio Logisticarum have all tested his resolve. More often than not, he has prevailed. Around him stands a vast machinery of counsel and calculation. Entire corps of strategic advisors attend his commands. Cloisters of priests chant for divine favor. A personally maintained circle of seers, prophets, and tarot readers, the collegiate astroleks, sift fate itself for signs and portents. Through their combined labors, Leontus has orchestrated hundreds of remarkable victories. Yet his priorities are unwavering. First, the defense of Terra, then the Sol system, then its bordering subsectors, and only then the wider frontiers of the Segmentum Solar. The throne world endures. All else is secondary. A scholar of war and a master of history, Leontus is a polyhister of rare breadth and a tactician of the highest caliber. His keen intellect and restless energy belie more than a century of command experience. Costly rejuvenate regimens sustain his vitality, while discreet bionic augmentations hidden beneath polished armor ensure that his body does not betray his will. To the soldiers who behold him, he appears tireless. Yet beyond the spectacle of command, a different truth lingers. In private moments, Leontus carries a weariness of spirit. He has witnessed the Imperium's cruelties inflicted upon its own people, and has authorized many of them himself. Millions of Guardsmen have marched to their deaths at his order, cast into nightmarish war zones from which few would return. He does not relish these choices. He regards them as necessary evils upon a long and bitter road toward survival. With grim pragmatism, the old soldier understands he will not live to see the final salvation he works toward. It is enough for him to lay the stones of that distant future. Though his authority ends at the borders of the Segmentum Solar, Leontus has not confined himself to those limits. He looks to the legends of St. Macarius as precedent. If distant wars must be fought to shield Terra from harm, then distance is no barrier. When the Fourth Tyrannic War erupted, he did not hesitate. The Lord Solar rode for the Bastia subsector to marshal its faltering defense. There, astride his cybernetic steed Constantine, he became both commander and symbol. At Sanctum, his presence steadied trembling lines, and his words carried as much force as any artillery barrage. Rhetoric and valor flowed from him in equal measure, and men who might have broken instead stood firm. On the shores of Marek, my friends, the fathers of our fathers made a stand under the flag of Belladon. Did they break and run? Yes. They ran to friendly places and loved ones, where they could be safe. And then, by providence of the God Emperor, they saw what those friendly places and loved ones would become if they did not stand fast, and so stand fast they did. How do you feel? There was a triumphant bellow from the ranks. Belladon blood is like wine on the Emperor's lips, Novobaski stormed. Belladon's souls have a special place at his side. If we spill our blood here today, then this is the soil he has chosen to bless and anoint. Oh, lucky land. He took out his plasma pistol and carefully toggled off the safety. Stand firm, my friends. Stand firm and fire. If they're going to have our precious blood, they'll find the cost is dearer than they can afford. Fury of Belladon. Fury. Fury. For all its staggering scale and the unavoidable decentralization demanded by a galaxy-spanning empire, the Astra Militarum rests upon a hierarchy as rigid as adamantine. Its chain of command is vast, intricate, and unforgiving, a labyrinth of authority within which every soldier must know their precise station. Discipline is not encouraged. It is enforced without hesitation. From the newest recruit clutching a lasgun for the first time to the most decorated general commanding entire star systems, each stands within an unbroken line of obedience that ascends, ultimately, to the Golden Throne itself. At the pinnacle of the Departamento Munitorum stands the Lord Commander Militant. This exalted figure serves as the voice and symbol of the entire Astra Militarum before the Senate Imperialis, and, through that sacred body's authority, before the Emperor. Such is the power vested in this office that its holder is often counted among the High Lords of Terror. Yet despite commanding wars that span thousands of light years, the Lord Commander Militant rarely departs the throne world. Their battlefield is policy, logistics, and the shaping of grand strategy across the Imperium's domains. In theory, the 5 segmentum lords relay orders downward through sector officers and subsector commanders, who in turn direct the various militarum regimentos under their jurisdiction. Thus, the will of the High Lords is translated into action by the Department Munitorum. In practice, however, the vast gulfs between worlds, the distortions of warp travel, and the brutal delays of astropathic communication render such neat procedure imperfect at best. The scale of the Imperium resists meaningful central governance. As a result, operational control in any given war zone falls to a senior officer of the Militarum Regimentum, a general, high marshal, or lord general, who assumes full responsibility for the execution of their assigned objectives. These objectives vary wildly in scale and severity. One commander may oversee a campaign lasting decades to purge a star system of savage orc infestations. Another may be tasked with defending Cyprite mines or Promethium refineries from persistent pirate raids. Equally common are the grim undertakings of reconquest, reclaiming planets that have slipped from the Imperium's grasp. Whatever the assignment, the war zone's commander bears responsibility for the deployment, coordination, and sacrifice of every asset at their disposal. Beneath the overall ground commander, surrounded by a retinue of attachés, logisticians, priests, and advisors, stand the individual regiments and their officers. A militarum regimentum encompasses multiple regiments, typically raised from the same planet or system. Shared culture, training traditions, and methods of war bind these formations together. So ingrained is this unity that soldiers and officials alike often blur the distinction between regimentum and regiment, referring to all guardsmen from Cadia simply as the Cadian Regiment. On their homeworlds, planetary defense forces may bear a bewildering variety of names, cohorts, militia bands, genocorps, or other locally favored titles. To the generals of the Astra Militarum, however, such distinctions are immaterial. All are regiments in purpose, and all are resources to be expended in the Emperor's wars. In accordance with the doctrines of the Tactica Imperium, regiments are divided into companies, each under the command of a senior officer. The number of companies varies according to the regiment's type and size, ranging from as few as 3 to several dozen. Companies are then subdivided into platoons or squadrons. An infantry platoon typically consists of a commanding officer, a small staff, and several squads of guardsmen. each squad led by a sergeant whose authority is immediate and absolute in the din of battle. Across the Imperium stand the austere institutions known as the Schola Progenia. Here are sent the orphan children of imperial officials, the sons and daughters of servants who gave their lives in duty to the throne. Staffed by ecclesiarchal drill abbots and relentless instructors, these martial academies mould their charges into unwavering adherents of the imperial creed. Those who graduate from this crucible are known as progena. The destiny of a progena is determined by aptitude and temperament. Some are chosen to serve as officers in the Imperial Navy. Others are recruited into the Officio Assassinorum, or sent to train as commissars within the Officio Prefectus. A rare few may even attract the attention of the Inquisition, yet the majority are directed toward one of two primary paths of service. Those who display exceptional zeal and unshakable faith in the God Emperor may be inducted into the orders of the Adepta Sororitas. Most progena, regardless of gender, are assigned instead to the ranks of the Militarum Tempestus. The Tempestus Scions are among the most elite soldiers the Departamento Munitorum can field. Rigorously trained from youth, they are equipped with the finest wargear available, armor of rigid armorplus and ceramite, and weapons such as rapid-firing hotshot volley guns and plasma armaments capable of annihilating even heavily armored foes. They descend into battle from Valkyrie gunships, striking with precision where conventional forces might falter. Others, shaped by sterner disciplines, become commissars. These political officers serve within the Astra Militarum as embodiments of imperial authority. They enforce discipline with absolute resolve and do not hesitate to execute those who falter in the crucible of war. Where courage wavers, the commissar stands as reminder that duty is not optional and failure is paid for in blood. Weapons, armor, equipment, and armored support, whilst varied between regiment, will be relatively similar in design and function across the Astra Militarum. The ancient specifications, lent by Standard Template Construct, or STC, are ancient beyond counting. Many have been in production for millennia, given their efficacy and reliability. It is the superstition and horror at technological innovation within the Imperium of the 41st millennium that prevents development of new weapons, armor, and support machinery. Even slight alterations invoke questions of heresy from the Adeptus Mechanicus. Thus, ongoing reliance on tried and tested equipment is the norm within the Guard. The most commonly utilized weapon within the Astra Militarum is the las rifle, or las gun. This reliable energy weapon operates even within the most heinous conditions and utilizes a powerful laser directed toward an enemy to vaporize the enemies of the God Emperor. Weapons with solid ammunition may also be found, such as the autogun, which propels projectiles toward an enemy. Many infantry squads, particularly those with specialized fighting forces or expertise, such as the Cadian shock troops, may utilize powerful portable weaponry to bolster their combat capability. Flamers project streams of burning promethium, grenade launchers, fire fragmentation grenades for anti-personnel use, and armor-piercing crack grenades that penetrate the armor of a tank, or even a heretic Astartes. Melter guns fire shimmering beams of thermal energy, turning mortal or metal into molten slag. It is the long las that is the measure of an exceptional marksman. These expertly designed las rifles boast a lengthened barrel and optical sights that enable a kill range far surpassing the normal capability of the standard las rifle and soldier. Temperamental power packs may lend increased charge and stopping power, but are expensive and prone to explosive accident if improperly handled or at the targeting of an imperial foe. More crude or indelicate weapons and support may be seen with saber and cavalry. The low-tech nature of this equipment may at face value seem ineffective, but the psychological impact of a cavalry charge remains as impactful in the 41st millennium as it did in the second. The steeds may vary from flesh and blood to genetically and cybernetically engineering monstrosity. The Death Riders of Krieg may see lance or saber. Frag-tipped impact lances allow direct acquisition of explosive ordnance to foe, as the shrapnel is designed in such a way that the explosion shreds the target, but not the rider. In some specialized units, melter lance heads can be fashioned. When detonated, they can burn through the armor of even a mechanized foe. But the true strength of the Imperial Guard, other than its countless regiments and battalions, is heavy weapons, artillery, and armored vehicles that equalize the disparity between many of the Imperium's foes and the mortal Guardsman. Massed infantry are lent heighted killing power via scorching energy beams, high explosive rounds, and flame blasts from heavy weapon teams. The weapons used by these teams vary from las cannons, mortars, heavy bolter, flame projector, or autocannons. In the occasion when a heretic, Xenos, or chaos threat is beyond even this killing power, powerful artillery can be brought to bear. Field ordnance batteries require a 3-man team to operate powerful stopping power, and Malleus rocket launchers rain explosives high over enemy positions. Bombast field guns lob heavy high explosive shells into enemy positions, while heavy las cannons act as direct fire anti-armor emplacements. Armored battalions thunder alongside legions of massed infantry. Venerable yet reliable, the Leman Russ has served as the primary battle tank of the Astra Militarum for millennia. Possessed of notoriously resilient armor and a belligerent machine spirit, Leman Russ can weather a storm of enemy fire and emerge operational. The Leman Russ's turret is particularly versatile, allowing for a range of weapon systems to be fitted, including devastating anti-infantry weapons, such as the Punisher Gatling cannon, and armor-piercing anti-tank guns, such as the Vanquisher battle cannon. Leman Russ tanks are ordinarily deployed in small squadrons, with various patterns often fielded together to ensure complementary weapon loadouts and provide the unit with the tools they require to take on a wide range of targets. The sight of a Leman Russ tank rolling into battle is often enough to lift the spirits of a beleaguered force of Astra Militarum infantry. Based on the same chassis as the ubiquitous Chimera armored transport, the Hellhound trades troop capacity for a series of Prometheum storage tanks, shielded pump systems and thermal containment units, which each feed turret-mounted melter, inferno, or chem weapons. In battle, the Hellhound rolls into the thick of the fighting and use their inferno cannons to unleash torrents of flaming Prometheum into trenches and bunkers. One of the most feared variants of the Hellhound, often referred to by Imperial Guard troops as the Bane Wolf, is fitted with a turret-mounted chem cannon. This lethal weapon projects gouts of corrosive gas that can dissolve organic material in seconds. Infantry unfortunate enough to be struck by such a weapon are at risk of being dissolved into bubbling pools of noxious ooze. Sentinels are capable of marching swiftly across open ground, yet also possess the maneuverability and agility to advance down urban battlefields or across uneven ridges, rendering them incredibly versatile assets. This versatility allows them to perform multiple different roles in the varied armies of the Astra Militarum. Lightly armored scout sentinels are often deployed to undertake reconnaissance duties or act as mobile observation posts for Allied artillery. Armored sentinels possess thicker armor and additional weaponry and are designed to hold vital positions located on front lines, such as supporting infantry advances with the aid of heavy weapons. This said, even armored sentinels cannot stand toe-to-toe with enemy tanks, and therefore sentinel formations are utilized and led carefully by their commanders to maximize battlefield impact. The mighty Valkyrie is the Imperial answer to close air support. Rugged and versatile, the Valkyrie primarily serves as a transport or ground attack aircraft, though it is also capable of intercepting enemy flyers. As airborne assets, Valkyries are operated by the Aeronautica Imperialis, a division of the Imperial Navy. However, these aircraft are often deployed for extended periods with Imperial ground forces, most notably the Militarum Tempestus, whose Tempestus scions have made a bloody and effective art form of the Valkyrie combat drop, leaping from hovering Valkyrie gunships to descend on grav chutes and strike deep behind enemy lines. Having dropped off their cargo, Valkyrie gunships are capable of providing heavy fire support for the infantry below, hunting targets of opportunity and keeping their allies abreast of enemy troop movements. Inquisitor's Log, Designation, Ordo Militum, Subject, Mortality. As the navigator commences warp translation, I am given a moment's respite before our next mission, our new world, our next foray with the beleaguered beast that is the Astra Militarum. I find myself pondering mortality. For what is it that fascinates me so with the Imperial Guard? How could it not be mortality? The indomitable human spirit, our will to not just survive, but to thrive in a galaxy that wishes anything but. The Guard epitomizes this ideal. Every mortal guardsman that fights and dies for the God Emperor illustrates what makes humanity the dominant force in the galaxy, but also the most tragic, the nature of our mortal coil. For what is more noble than to face overwhelming odds in the service of one's own ideals or the values of the Emperor himself, and to put boot to soil, glove to rifle, to face the heretic, the mutant, the Xeno, and to fight and die, knowing that only one's end is incorrigible. I'm telling you this because I respect you, and this is the most important thing you need to understand as an officer. He glanced back over his shoulder at the sidegun port looking above the floor of the cleave, at the troopers fortifying the foxholes and trenches. What I mean is, no one is up for this. Not you, not me, not Lord Castellan Frecking Creed. War isn't natural. Nothing second nature about standing in a hole, holding it as the last fire screams in. People aren't built for it mentally. It rips us up. So, to survive, to do what needs to be done and stop them. He pointed at the distant column of enemies. We have to become someone else. High Command does most of the work for us. They put us in uniforms and regulate our haircuts. Give us titles based on our role in the machine: lieutenant, sergeant, gunner, pilot. Tell us how we're part of a great institution full of traditions and bravery. Fill our eyes with films of great deeds. To bury that person we are, and make us into the tools we need to be. But the last step you have to take yourself, Marder. You need to step into that other person who would stand when Marder Helska would run. Who will trade the lives of men and women she cares about for yards of dirt she's never seen before and never will again? Who will manipulate people who trust her to take actions that will end in bloody ruin and call it leadership? Colonel, we're about to face the enemy, and you need to find that person. Put it on like an Astartes donning his battle plate, because without it, you won't get through this. She stared at him, mind reeling. This was recidivist talk, discussing Cadia as if its culture and traditions were some grand conspiracy to dupe its population into giving up their lives. But it was true, wasn't it? She could feel it. Just do one thing. Don't lose the person you are now. Remember her. Hold her close and keep her secret so you can find her when this is all over. Because if you don't, if you become the armor, well, that's how you get someone like Ursakar Frecking Creed. Yes, sir. I understand, sir. No, you don't. Not yet. Each of the manifold horrors of the galaxy is enough to drive a human insane. Xenos monstrosities, otherworldly sorcerers, and unholy aberrations from darkest nightmare plague mankind. Against everything that threatens humanity's survival stand the Astra Militarum.